Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining tonight's telephone town hall with Congressman Eugene Vindman. My name is Amanda Farnan, and I am the Congressman's Communications Director. I will be moderating tonight's important discussion. We'll discuss key issues affecting our community across the 7th District, including rising costs at the grocery store, future of SNAP, Medicaid, and health care, and the many important issues impacting federal workers, just to name a few. The Congressman looks forward to answering your questions live tonight. To ask a question, please press *3 on your phone at any time throughout the call, and you'll be placed in the queue. Press *6 if you'd like to leave your email with our team and subscribe to our newsletter. Again, it's *3 for questions and *6 for the newsletter. We'll get to as many questions as possible tonight. And before we get to your questions, I'd like to turn it over to Congressman Vindman for some opening remarks. Congressman, go ahead.
Thank you, Amanda. Good evening, everyone. Congressman Eugene Vindman here. Thank you for tuning into my telephone town hall tonight. It's an honor to serve you in the U.S. House of Representatives. This is my third town hall since being sworn into Congress, and it is these conversations that inform my work on Capitol Hill on your behalf. We are on pace to keep up these open forums often, and I'm happy to do this in these uncertain times. This is our first public forum since last evening's joint address from President Trump, and I take my duties representing our district in Congress seriously, which is why I was in the room. The president spewed a lot of lies during that speech, and he outlined an agenda that is opposed to the success of our community. We have 72,000 veterans and more than 55,000 federal workers in our community. They are our neighbors and our friends. We see them at church and at our kids' soccer games. I care deeply about them, the health of our community, and how we succeed together, which is why I'm opposed so much to what the president is doing, even though I support government efficiency. Our democracy works best when people are engaged, ask questions, and hold their leaders accountable, and that's exactly why I'm speaking to you tonight. As we all know, there's no shortage of issues to discuss. Prices are going up, and Republicans have not shown that this remains a priority for them. What happens in Washington isn't just a headline. It has real consequences for our neighbors and families right here in our community. Whether it's uncertainty about the future of our federal workforce, rising health care costs, cuts to vital benefits, or concerns about our national security, I know many of you are feeling the impact. That's why I'm here, to listen, to answer your questions, and to make sure your voices are heard where it matters most. In Virginia's 7th District, we know what real leadership looks like. It looks like delivering lower costs, protecting the livelihoods of our hardworking federal employees who keep our country running, standing up with our allies rather than cozying up to dictators, ensuring that the brand new Veterans Affairs Clinic that opened in Fredericksburg last Friday has the staff to care for our veterans, and fighting for better opportunities for every family. Finally, it's about telling you the truth because I respect you. Your voices matter, and I will continue fighting to make sure Washington listens. As a reminder, those who have joined us, please press #3 to get in line and ask your questions and share your opinion. Please press 6 to share your email with my team and sign up for our weekly newsletter. Let's get started.
Great. Thank you, Congressman. Now let's take the first question. I see a lot of folks in the queue, so again, *3 to ask your question, *6 to get in for the newsletter and share your email. We did have someone submit a question ahead of time, so I will share that question with you, Congressman. We'll hear your response, and then we will take some folks live. So from Nate in Fredericksburg, he has watched the State of the Union last evening and is concerned with what he heard. He wants to know what your reaction was to the State of the Union and how we're going to fight for our federal workers.
Well, look, I was disappointed. The president spoke for 100 minutes yesterday. He spent 2 minutes on the economy. And the economy, frankly, was the #1 issue in the last election. And so I was disappointed to not hear any ideas on how we can lower the cost of eggs and groceries, and lower the cost of living for our residents. Last night, we heard a lot of lies from the president, frankly, and his agenda is opposed to the success of our community. He was divisive, made empty promises, and refused to take responsibility for policies that have hurt American families. I'd characterize last night and the last several weeks of the presidency as chaos. And so, I remain committed to delivering real results for my constituents. I will work with Republicans across the aisle, just like I did when I sponsored my first bill. I had Republican bipartisan sponsorship. In fact, it was me and 4 other Republican members to address one of the issues that came up as a result of one of the president's executive orders, and I'm happy to answer more questions about that. But that legislation actually resulted in the president backpedaling on that policy and helping the voters in this district.
Thank you, Congressman. We're going to take our first question from Loretta, calling in from Prince William County. Loretta, I'm going to allow your line to come on live here, and then you can go ahead with your question. Go ahead, Loretta.
I want to know why. What are the Democrats doing to put pressure on Donald Trump? Because it looks like nobody is putting pressure on him, and I am getting sick and tired of him disrespecting veterans. And what are the Democrats going to do to help these veterans get their jobs back? They need their jobs. Some of them are disabled.
Yeah, look, Loretta, I mean, you're talking about an issue that's critically important to me personally. I spent 25 years in the Army, so you're talking about my brothers and sisters. I've only been retired for a little over 2 years. This district, 7th Congressional District, has 72,000 veterans. 1/3 of federal employees are typically veterans. We have 55,000 federal civil servants in our district. And that's not including the military personnel at our 3 military installations. So, today there was an announcement that the VA plans to lay off 80,000 employees. And I mentioned in my opening remarks, the Fredericksburg Clinic that opened up, it's the largest VA healthcare facility, healthcare clinic in the country. But, $300 million investment to get it up, it doesn't do much good if there are no people there to run it. So I am very much concerned about this topic. I'm concerned about mental health for our veterans and frankly, our civil servants. And so I'll tell you, the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. And so we're in a position where we're fighting hard, but in order to move anything forward, we have to work in a bipartisan manner, which is why when the president announced one of his policies that affected federal workers, I quickly sprang to action and found Republican co-sponsors, introduced a piece of legislation, and literally a week later, the president backpedaled, affecting hundreds of federal civil servants in the district, in the Commonwealth, and thousands around the country and around the world. So it's everything from introducing legislation, especially where we know we can get wins and get bipartisan support. It's about making sure that constituents know their rights, and that's one of the reasons why I'm having frequent town halls, so we can talk about that. The first one we did was a virtual town hall, and I had the former acting director of Office of Personnel Management and a labor union, a civil service labor union representative talk about what those rights are. And then it's there are over 100 lawsuits that have been filed, many of them successfully. In fact, one today went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the preliminary decision from the Supreme Court was against the president. So it's going to be a multi-factor approach. Unfortunately, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, obviously, there's already been a lot of pain in a little over a month that the president has been in the White House, and we're likely to see, some additional pain. I feel this in my own family because I have relatives that are federal civil servants. And so my message to you is obviously know your rights and that we need you. We need you to continue to serve. Your service in government is critical to providing the resources and programs that the American people rely on and national security. So do not bow to pressure. Continue to work and know that we have your back and we'll continue to fight for you.
Thank you, Congressman. Great to hear that. And we'll go to Willie next. Willie, I am going to bring you live here. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Good afternoon, Congressman.
Yep. Good afternoon, Willie.
I've been wondering why, well, first of all, Elon Musk doesn't know anything about the operations of, I don't think, any part of our government. But my question is, why can't department heads, directors, all across the board in every phase of government go through their own budget process and examine every contract, everything that is paid for, from paper clips to airplanes to tanks to ships, and if they want to make it a mandate that to find 8-10%, say within 120 days, and come back with it. And that's a reduction across the board, every agency, pretty evenly distributed as far as percentage-wise on savings. I just don't know how this man can allow someone from the outside to gut our government like that. I've been involved with a budget process that way. Look at every option each contract has. Whether it's 1 year, 2 year, find those items.
Apologies, Willie. We're trying to get to a lot of questions, but we appreciate your insight here. Congressman, go ahead.
Yeah, Willie, look, you're talking common sense, and unfortunately, what I've seen so far is shoot, ready, aim. So implement the policy, then think about the policy, and then adjust the policy, which is no way to run government. Maybe it works with some Silicon Valley firm, but when you have people relying on government to provide national security, to provide programs and benefits, absolutely no way to run a government. So Elon, depending on what day you ask and who you ask, he's either the head, this unelected billionaire, making illegal cuts to programs, is either the head of Doge or he is just a figurehead. We are obviously pushing hard back on him. What we're seeing is illegal activity and also unconstitutional activity. The Constitution is clear that Congress has the power of the purse. And I know the voters in this district elected me to stand up for them, to represent them in Congress, and not some unelected billionaire to go into every department or agency and make cuts that are nonsensical, that violate data privacy or fire workers that are involved in nuclear security. In fact, my guest yesterday at the State of the Union was a former senior civil servant who worked in nuclear security. She worked for the Bush administration, for the Obama administration, for Trump 1, and for Biden on nuclear security and nonproliferation. Her agency is where some of these cuts were made to people that are working on nuclear security, and then they backpedaled and tried to rehire them. So these are frankly dangerous activities. And in my mind, it's not a question of if, but when it's going to harm Americans. And so I've got a real problem with it. I think it does make a lot of sense to look for efficiencies, and I'm very much in favor of looking for efficiencies and making cuts to regulations and programs where they're duplicative or they're not useful. but it's really a load of BS. These the cuts that DOJ is trying to take credit for. They made the mistake of saying they saved the government $8 billion when it was $8 million. So they're a bunch of hacks, really, unelected hacks.
Thank you, Congressman. I think a lot of folks on this call would agree with you. We're going to Thomas next. Thomas, if I could have you ask your question. Thomas, you should be off mute if you want to ask your question. All right. We can come back to Thomas. Anna, you will be next. Let's get you live here. Anna from Prince William County.
Hi. My question is, how can the president take these actions and there's no checks and balances to protect the people? Because it feels, it's for the people, by the people, and everybody was elected in to take care of our best interests, and that does not seem to be happening. And second part of that question, why aren't we deporting Elon Musk? How can he just come in and be a part of actions in our government? That seems crazy. That's my questions.
Yeah. Well, Anna, I appreciate that. Look, the president obviously has a lot of power, and so he can appoint special government employees and other folks to assist him in the implementation of his policies. What we've seen this president do as it relates to Elon Musk is completely unprecedented. He has tens of billions of dollars in contracts with numerous departments and agencies. He has conflicts of interest related directly to his wallet, and he has not recused himself in any way. This is a violation of basically every principle you can think of in government ethics. And remember, I was a government ethics lawyer. I worked at the White House as the senior ethics lawyer in the National Security Council. So it's very disturbing. It's highly problematic. Checks and balances, the Constitution is also clear. You have the courts, you have Congress, and you have the president. The president's job is to faithfully execute the laws of the land, which is what I'd say the vast majority of presidents have done. And, obviously there have been some lapses, but their job is to faithfully execute. They're the executive, right? Congress has the power of the purse. So we debate, and sometimes it's messy. We debate issues, we debate policies, we write law. When we agree on it, we vote it up and down. It goes to the president. It's signed into law, and then his job is to faithfully execute. He has no power to decide how to spend money. That is the power of Congress. And so, again, this is another area where the president is acting in an unlawful and unconstitutional manner. And there are over 100 lawsuits out there now. In fact, there was one today where the Supreme Court decided that the president refusing to spend $2 billion that is in law in an appropriation from Congress signed by a president was unlawful, and directed the president to sign it. Obviously, I think we're at a critical moment. We have to see what the president does. But this administration so far has taken a number of very damaging actions to our district, affecting civil servants, freezing funds that affect schools and farmers and veterans. And we're pushing back. We're pushing back hard. But we need some help from our colleagues in the Republican Party to do the same.
Thank you, Congressman. We are going to bring Shannon from Spotsylvania here on live. Shannon, could you go ahead and ask your question?
Yes. Good evening. My question, the president has made it very clear that he does not care about disabled people. He openly mocks them. My 2.5-year-old son has an ultra-rare genetic disease. He probably won't live to see 5. My question is, what are you going to do to help us protect Medicaid for those whose lives depend on the services provided?
Well, Shannon, first of all, you certainly have my sympathies. Having a special needs child is extremely, extremely challenging and under the best circumstances. Right now, it is unbelievably challenging. So there are 100,000 Virginians in the 7th Congressional District that are enrolled in Medicaid. That's basically 1 out of every 7 to 8 people. Enormous number. The Republicans passed a budget, not a single Democrat voted in favor of it, that calls for $880 billion in cuts over 10 years to a program that could only be, that you could only get these savings from cutting Medicaid. I don't want to get into sort of the boring details about what committees and all that, but the only program that can account for those cuts is Medicaid. And why is this happening? To cut $3.5 trillion in taxes for billionaires, the wealthiest Americans. And that is completely outrageous. It is outrageous behavior. Not a single Democrat supported it. Every Republican supported it. And that's their game plan. That's what they're looking to do. So first, I saw an untold letter to Speaker Johnson voicing opposition to any attempt to cut access or benefits to the vital programs that Americans rely on, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I signed a letter with my colleagues in the Virginia Senator Kane, requesting information on health resources and services administration guarantees, such as community health centers operating in Virginia. These centers are experiencing delays in getting funds. In fact, I had the CEOs of 3 or 4 regional hospitals in my office today. And I spoke to health center leadership over the last few weeks, and they are talking about devastating cuts to Medicaid. They are here talking to Democrats and Republicans alike, making sure that we understand the impact. And obviously, I understand it well. I think the people on my side of the aisle understand it well. But, we need to make sure that our voices are heard, and telling the administration that prioritizing cutting taxes for the highest earners at the expense of folks that need the benefits, that rely on the benefits, is totally unacceptable. So we will continue to fight for you, Shannon, and we will continue to fight for every one of those 100,000 Virginians in the 7th Congressional District that rely on Medicaid.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you, Shannon, for sharing your story. Ryan, I am going to bring you live right here. Ryan from Prince William County, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, sir. Can you hear me?
I can, Ryan.
All right. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this. Sorry, I'm trying to video this at the same time, so I have a record of it. I'm so over the moon. I was actually the finance director for Ukraine security assistance starting in 2017. So I just want to say thank you for what you did when you stood up and spoke out about that illegal hold. I remember walking into the office and someone said, turn everything off. And we said, what does that mean? We're now seeing that again, of course. And I've just told my coworkers, we've been through this before. So one thing I just want to say thank you. And then also, I remember as we tried to understand what was happening with that Ukraine hold, and then we realized the impoundment possibility, I remember getting quite agitated with my Navy colleagues who were telling me, well, we don't know what the priority is. When we knew that the Speaker of the House at the time was moving articles of impeachment over, and we said, we need to hurry this up. You need to understand. So my question, sir, and I apologize for being so long, but is that as a federal, as federal servants, we are bipartisan. We are trying to do what the president's agenda is. And so what I think has been very frustrating for myself and my colleagues is that now the federal workforce is being put under a microscope, and certainly there's a war with us. So is there anything Congress can do right now to sort of push back and explain to the administration, to this Doge, that we aren't the bad guys?
Yeah, look, Brian. Thank you for the question, and thank you for your work. Ukraine is obviously an important national security for the United States, and it has been. And so it's really frustrating to see an issue like this politicized, and us turning away from our values, supporting and defending democracies in favor of supporting dictators like Vladimir Putin. And so, it's in our own interest. A few weeks ago, I was in Culpeper, which is one of the Piedmont counties, part of the 7th Congressional District, and I was talking to a farmer. And the farmer made a great point that, frankly, people that are not in the national security world and just not involved day to day don't understand. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the prices of crops went up because Ukraine is such a major producer, and the price of fertilizer went sky high, and it hasn't recovered in 3 years. And so what happens we're not in a time and place in this world now where, like, the oceans can protect us. We obviously, we know there are missiles that can reach us, but also the cost of goods and the fact that we're in an interconnected world, an interconnected market also affect us. And so there's a national security issue, and there's also an issue related to kitchen table that we have to be cognizant of. And the farmer got it right away. And so in our pocketbook interest and in our interest in securing other democracies and freedom in accordance with our values, I think we have to stay laser focused on that. And as I was pleased to hear that some sort of deal is looking like it may continue to go forward, even though what occurred in the White House last Friday was obviously shameful behavior. The attack on Zelensky, who had flown all the way across the ocean to sign this deal, and then was derailed for some sort of TV or publicity stunt. But folks like you, civil servants that work day in, day out, quietly in offices around the district, around the DMV, and around the country, are critical to ensuring our national security. You don't do it for the money. Everybody knows that a federal job or government job is not lucrative. You could probably take your talents elsewhere and do much better. But your work is absolutely critical, and that's exactly why I sprung to action based on a constituent call a few weeks ago, and I introduced my bill that looked to reverse one of the president's policies related to federal employees. And a week after I introduced this bill, the president did reverse himself. And so it's a small step, but a significant step. Why? Because it demonstrates that they do understand pressure, that they bow to pressure. And whether that's pressure from lawmakers like myself, other bills in Congress, the letters that we write, constituent calls like your calls and the other folks that are listening, or the 100+ lawsuits there where they're frankly losing in court. These are meaningful. Obviously, people are suffering, and federal civil servants are being demonized unfairly. But we're fighting back, and my message is one of hope that we must fight back, and we'll make our voices heard.
Thank you, Congressman. I am going to bring Subi live. Subi from Woodbridge, could you ask your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Hello. Good evening.
Hi, Subi.
Yes.
How are you? I can hear you.
Actually, my question is: we see that President Trump is cutting jobs instead of creating jobs, and increasing high inflation because of the custom of raw material and energy from Canada and Mexico, and cutting tax on billionaires. And I don't know what the inflation will be soon happening. Also, there is a dangerous about, for instance, I got to 65, I'm senior now. I'm denied from Medicare and Medicaid because I didn't finish the 10 years working contributing to Medicare. There are so many things that it is very dangerous and very it's very difficult for us, especially seniors, and we don't find any new opportunities to contribute and to work. We have good health and we can do. So I hope that there will be something from your side, the representatives, to push forward and to stand up for what is Mr. Trump is doing, like he is seeing only himself and the billionaires. He doesn't have any idea about these middle class and poor people in the country. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Subi. I appreciate that question. And look, so far Republicans haven't put a single bill on the floor to make a dent in costs and the things that hardworking Americans are struggling with. And last night, as you said, he spoke for 100 minutes, and he spent 2 minutes talking about costs. And I think I certainly remember this. I think other folks. He said that be prepared for some, and I'm probably going to get this not 100% right, but some adjustments related to costs and with tariffs. So think about his policies. You're 100% right. He's firing workers. He's not growing the economy. He's shrinking the economy. He is cutting spending, cutting programs that buy products from our hardworking farmers, and we have 3,000 farms in the 7th congressional district in the 5 counties that are in the Piedmont and the 2 counties in the Potomac, the rural counties. And so, the government purchased lots of those goods to send overseas in exercising our soft power. And he's put on tariffs that went into effect, 25% tariffs for Canada and Mexico. I think we're at 20% with China. And what's this going to do? It's going to increase the cost, the price of goods. And so, just 6 weeks ago, our economy was on one trajectory. And look, people, obviously, things were not perfect. And I'm not going to defend Joe Biden. I think I have a number of different problems with Joe Biden. But the economy, at least, inflation was high, but it's starting to come down, was headed in a particular direction. And in the last 6 weeks, the chaos has changed the course of our economy. There was an article from the Atlanta Federal Reserve, and I'm not using, these are not my words, this is from the Atlanta Federal Reserve. Trump recession, like a Trump recession, is starting to build because of the chaos and uncertainty, the tariffs, the random cuts in spending and jobs. It's taken our economy on a completely different trajectory in historically quick speed. It's almost like it's almost moving at the speed of how COVID affected the economy. That's how fast the direction of the economy is shifting. And so it's very, very concerning. the budget proposed by Republicans that calls for $2 trillion in cuts across many different programs, including Medicaid and SNAP, that provides meals for disadvantaged people. In order to get cuts, I think $3.5 or $4.5 trillion in cuts for the billionaires is absolutely outrageous. And what does that do to our national debt, which is at $36 trillion? It just balloons it. And so, look, these are major issues. My first priority will always be to lower prices for Americans, whether it's food and groceries, gas, prescription drugs, housing. That's my priority because I live in the community. I don't know when the last time Elon Musk or Donald Trump purchased a sleeve of Coke, but when I was at the grocery store, it was $10. So I'm definitely cutting back on these not must-haves, but like-to-haves. And we're going to fight. We're going to fight like we did, voting as a bloc against the budget that the Republicans passed solely on their own. And we're going to fight when it comes to these funding bills that are going to be coming up in coming weeks to make sure that they're not cutting programs that hardworking Americans rely on. We're in the minority. Obviously, no guarantees it's going to succeed, but we have been united up to this point. They have shown signs of fracture, and we're going to do our best to make sure that we protect American consumers and constituents.
Great. Thank you, Congressman. We are just at about the 15-minute mark until we are going to have to close off here. So just sharing that for everyone. Again, *3 if you want to ask a question. We'll be able to take in your question. If we don't get to it, we will, of course, follow up. And *6 for subscribing to our newsletter and sharing your email. Raymond, I am going to bring you live here. Raymond, go ahead and ask your question.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, Congressman Vindman, thank you for taking the time. It's nice to talk to you again. Appreciate it when you came out to Stafford, talk to the community. It was great to sit down and have lunch with you. You probably don't remember me, but we had lunch after you attended the service with us. I have a quick question. With all the cuts within the VA, what can we do, or what is being done to try to ensure, veterans' health, which is key, as well as benefits are affected and not affected at or minimally affected at all. What can we do?
Yeah, look, great. First of all, thanks. Great talking to you again. And look, our veterans, as I said, are a priority for me. I served 25 years in uniform, and these are my brothers and sisters. We have 72,000 veterans in the 7th Congressional District, and so a significant chunk of the population. Today, VA announced that it plans over 80,000 layoffs. That is not a recipe for servicing our veterans. And so I look at this, I try to look at things in a strategic fashion, and veterans have always enjoyed bipartisan support from members of Congress, Democrat, Republican, and it was an active duty service member type issue that proved very successful in being able to push back on the president. And so, I'm going to look for opportunities to work across the aisle to make sure that we certainly prevent the cuts that are not in any way, that don't appear to be strategic or based on efficiency or effectiveness at the VA. And we're going to get to work on that. Again, it came in, we learned about this today, so we'll start work on it tomorrow. And then also keeping in mind that 1/3 of federal service, all civil servants, are veterans. And so attacks on the federal civil service are profoundly anti-veteran. And I've got a major problem with that. So last month I was part of a letter opposing late-night cuts to terminate staff of VA. We're going to continue to fight against that. And as a member of the House Armed Services Committee, I know my fellow vets serving in D.C. with me. They are patriotic. I think that committee happens to be one of the most bipartisan. And the moderate members of the Republican Party, I'm going to do my best to convince them to sign on to this bipartisan effort to protect these jobs and restore these jobs. In fact, I co-sponsored a piece of legislation that would direct the government to restore every veteran that has been laid off so far, restore their job. So that's what I'm going to do to fight for veterans. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, and thanks, Congressman. I'm going to have probably time for 2 more questions. Sandra, I am going to bring you live here and just loading here. Sandra, go ahead. Oh, Sandra, do we still have you on? If Sandra's on, you can ask your question. If not, we will go over to another caller here. All right, Patrick, I do see you on here. And if I could get Patrick on live, let's see if you can ask your question, Patrick.
Yes, good evening, Congressman. I'm not going to be too long-winded, but I wanted to know, since the president is signing all these executive orders, we have a Senate and a Congress, is there any intention to make any constitutional amendment to stop this in the future? And what it is that we are doing right now to stop him from his unlawful behavior? And is it Elon Musk have any rights to be making decisions on government affairs when he's not even a government employee or an elected official? That's my question. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Patrick. I appreciate that question. Look, the president has signed several hundred of these executive orders, and so many of them are illegal and unconstitutional. And you're right. There's, separation of powers. We have a Congress, House of Representatives, and a Senate. We have the courts, and we have the White House. And so under normal circumstances, the Congress would be a check on power. But right now, Republicans control the House and the Senate. And so we have not seen a single Republican stand up to this president and his unlawful action. So what we're doing is we're picking apart those areas where we can pick up. The majority in the House is so narrow. They have three vote majority that if we can get just 2 or 3 3 or more of them on our side, we can move legislation forward, or we can block some of their really poor legislation. So that's that piece of legislation that I've talked about now a couple times, and I'm not going to rehash that. Was finding Republicans that would directly go against an executive order. And so we have to look for opportunities like that. I think veterans issues, thinking about this, where there's support from Republicans, veterans issues, I think farmers, looking for those opportunities where we can get a few Republicans on our side, and basically stop these bad policies. Congress does have an oversight role, and so even if we can't exactly impact the executive order, we can bring in members of the administration and make them answer publicly hard questions. And so, when the president fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the chief of naval operations, and the vice chief of the Air Force, I immediately sent a letter, not asking, but demanding that they answer questions about why those firings occurred and what their criteria is for the people that they want to bring in their place. So obviously it's not an optimal situation, and we're fighting hard. A lot of these orders are illegal, and the fact that there are so many lawsuits, over 100 now, many of them ruling against the president, including the one I mentioned earlier today, directing him to spend funds in accordance with law that Congress passed. That's how we push back on these illegal or unconstitutional executive orders.
Thank you, Congressman. I have Mark coming on here from Woodbridge. Mark, if you could ask your question.
Yes, thanks so much for doing this. So I'm retired military, I'm retired government service, worked budget analyst for SecDef, et cetera. So I'm very interested in economy and healthcare. You're doing a great job of addressing those. Different direction here. I fear a little more sinister end state here. I think there's a possibility, given Trump's interaction with Secretary Esper and General Milley with the protesters in D.C., that might perhaps intentionally promote social unrest to give them an excuse to invoke the Insurrection Act, try to gain some type of military law, maybe even convince Congress to repeal posse comitatus or something like that. So do you think this is liberal hysteria, or have you heard similar theories, or what would your reaction to this be? Thank you.
Well, thanks, Mark. I mean, first of all, thank you for your service. It sounds like you've got a tremendous experience in advising on national security matters. And look, I'm concerned. Trump's behavior does demonstrate that he's testing the limits of his office's power in a way that has literally never been done. And so, I've been a politician for all of 8 weeks now. And so I've got a lot to learn as a politician, but I've spent 25 years in the Army, so I know how to fight. And we're going to fight back against his overreach. He wants to know exactly how far he can go before Congress will stop him. And so far, the Republicans have not voted to stop him. And we only need 3. And so I'm concerned about him abusing his power. But in court decision after court decision after court decision, he's been losing in court. And just today, the Supreme Court of the United States announced that the president needs to spend money in accordance with law passed by Congress. And so that includes conservative justices joining the moderate liberal ones. And so he has not yet outright resisted that. He has not yet defied the courts. And so we're looking very closely to see where this goes. We are looking to make sure that we restore Congress's power of the purse, not just because it's what the Constitution says, which is obviously very important, because I have a great deal of respect for the Constitution. I served in the military. I swore an oath to the Constitution in the military and as a member of Congress, but also because it's our job to look out for the American people, to defend the American people and represent the voters in this district, nearly 800,000 Americans. And we do that by preserving Medicaid, by preserving schools, funding for schools, by defending our values and making sure we stand with allies and not dictators. And so while I see a number of warning signs and alarm bells, I have not seen outright defiance of the courts yet. Obviously, that will be, a major issue if he does that. I would hope that even my Republican colleagues who have actually been getting beaten up in town halls that they're holding across the country in their own districts would at that point look to restore some sanity. And when the courts and the Congress are aligned and together, then we're in a pretty strong position. I will just say one more thing is that, you were talking about, the Department of Defense. The service, the senior uniforms lawyers, the judge advocates, where I spent half my career in the military, were fired. Those are the folks that are the ones that tell the armed forces whether something is constitutional and legal. And eliminating them is another warning sign. But look, there is a tremendous amount of pressure. Republicans were actually told by their leadership to stop doing town halls, in-person town halls. Their leadership is afraid that they will hear the people's voices. And so we have to make sure that we organize, that we stay focused, that we fight back, and that we make sure that our voices are heard.
Thank you, Congressman. We will take one last question from Brittany here in Prince William. Brittany, if you're still on, we'd love to hear your question.
Thank you. My question for you, Congressman, is how will you protect workers at the Department of Justice when Pam Boddy just announced today that she would be seeking to root out those who are Trump critics for potentially retaliatory and politically motivated firings?
Yeah, look, Brittany, first of all, thank you for the question. Thank you for sharing your story. It's important that we hear from people that are going through such awful harassment from this administration. And I know a thing or two about getting fired by this president from a position in the White House. So I had actually earlier today, I had a meeting, or maybe it was yesterday, with the union representing DOJ attorneys. So obviously you have to know your rights. You have to know, engage with folks that can help you defend your rights. And, firing somebody for doing their job, firing somebody from performing their duties in a apolitical manner, just serving the American people and not this president, it's fundamental to the civil service. It has been for decades. And you're upholding your oath to the Constitution. So we need to keep the pressure up. We need to make sure that, as I mentioned in the bill, protecting a certain class of federal civil servants, that the president feels the pressure, that his minions in departments and agencies feel the pressure, and that the elected officials around the country feel the pressure as well. If this happens to you, if it happens to a friend, reach out, let us know. It's important that we know, because we're in a position to open a constituent services case and push back formally. And finally, I would seriously consider your legal rights if you're unlawfully fired.
Thank you, Congressman. Now, I would love to offer you an opportunity to give some final thoughts. Folks who did ask a question and were screened, we will be able to follow up with you. But of course, our district office is always open if you have something urgent for a phone call or a voicemail at 703-987-2180. But Congressman, to close us off here, I'm going to let you give some final thoughts.
Look, thank you all for joining tonight. We've been on pace to hold a town hall basically every 2 weeks, because I'm not sure if we're going to be able to maintain that pace, but we're going to hold these very often. I know there are lots of folks that are hurting and want to be heard. And so I will continue to provide these opportunities. I hear you. I see you. I will defend you. And we have some trying times ahead. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But it's critically important that you keep showing up, because your work is critically important to the American people, that you keep fighting and you stay focused. Democracy is a struggle, and it's something worth fighting for, and I look forward to fighting with you. So thank you and have a great evening.